Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Q30 special report on the Student Government Association 2018 election. It has been nearly 24 hours since the polls have closed in the 2018 election, and no results have been submitted for SGA President, SGA Vice President, and Vice President for Finance. My name is MJ Barrett. I'm joined alongside now Austin Solomini on the Election Committee for the Student Government Association. Austin, so can you just catch our viewers up? I mean, we haven't seen any election results, but what can we expect?
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all, MJ.
Yeah, of course.
So, as we said, those three positions are pending review by the Election Committee. So to give you kind of a background of how our process works, there's what's called a grievance. Essentially, that means that a student files a written report to the Election Committee that they feel some part of our election policy was violated. The Election Committee then meets to discuss the grievance, and they decide on a sanction for the party that the grievance was against, or whether we need to act on it. Both parties are then informed of that decision.
Sure.
So in the event of a case like this, where we have grievances filed so close to the deadline, sometimes it can end up that the election results are put under review because we need to finish out that whole grievance process. In the event that there's an appeal submitted to us, we have 24-hour periods after our decision for individuals to submit an appeal to the Election Committee to either for a flaw in our process or new information relevant to their situation that they can submit to us, and then we can make a ruling on that appeal.
So as of last night, we talked to Victoria Johnson, Vice President for PR. She said there had been grievances filed and that there was going to be an appeal. Can you give us any update on this situation?
Sure. So we are in the appeal phase of that process. Sure. So the appeal deadline ended this afternoon for our ruling. So now we have the process of hearing appeals. So how that works is the Election Committee meets, we vote whether we want to hear the appeal. Once we vote on that, our bylaws outline that one Election Committee member meets with Erin Toomey, who is the Election Committee advisor, and they then make the decision on the appeal after pulling in the parties involved in the appeal as well. So,
like I said before, it's been 24 hours. We haven't heard any results. Has anyone on this Election Committee or on SGA as a whole, is anyone aware of who won the actual election for all three of these positions?
No one on the Election Committee or in student government actually knows the number of results for those three positions as of right now.
So we'll try to get into a little more of the details now. So you said, or we heard from Victoria last night, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we heard from Victoria that grievances had been filed that affected all three of these elections. Can you tell us whether these were separate grievances? Was it one grievance that included all three? How did that go down?
Multiple grievances were filed, and that's all I can say about that.
Okay, and how about, I read into the Constitution, it says any undergraduate student can file a grievance. Is there any word on who has filed the grievance and against which candidates?
Sure, so the Election Committee obviously is aware of that, but that's something I cannot share.
Okay, so we'll move on now to a couple other things. The Election Committee, it is my understanding by reading the bylaws, meets to discuss, as you had said, the appeal process. Is there any timetable for when that may be done? You said earlier that the time had elapsed and now we're in the decision phase.
Yeah, so of course everything we want to do is with speed, especially in this situation. So we have essentially been meeting straight for the past about 48 hours between us and our advisors. So we're really just trying to move things along as fast as possible. We do not have a hard deadline as to when we can get a decision because a lot of what we're dealing with now is scheduling and getting people that we need together.
Sure.
So that's the part we're in.
Has anything like this happened in whether you know about it or not on the Student Government Association where the results haven't been, from the time the polls closed to when they're supposed to be released, they haven't been for 24 hours?
Yeah, so I can speak on that. Our advisor, Erin Toomey, has said nothing like this has happened in about the past 10 years that she's been advising SGA.
So tell me a little bit more, if you can, about the grievance process. So someone submits this grievance because they feel, as you said, someone had broken one or more campaign rules. What happens to the candidate who's getting a grievance against them? Do they lose votes? Do they lose are they disqualified? How does that work?
It really depends on what the grievance is, and it's up to the Election Committee's discretion as to what that sanction will be. So it really is dependent on the situation.
And do you have any idea of the extent to what the sanctions could be? Is it disqualification?
Absolutely. So removal from the ballot is a disqualification.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility, sure.
Okay, and I think the last question that I have for you, Austin, you said there's no strict timetable. You're moving things as fast as you can. But as far as the Election Committee goes, you obviously don't want to keep the student body waiting.
Absolutely.
So what is the biggest priority right now in this whole situation?
The priority is getting those results finalized. Ideally, we would love to just certify the results right now, but we can't do so in good faith. So we just want to get our process done as fast, as transparent, and as fairly as possible. And I do want to assure students that, once this whole process runs its course, we run through our procedures, more information will come out. We will become much more transparent with the student body, but in fairness to ourselves, our process, and the parties involved, we can't release a lot of information at this time.
All right, Austin, we really thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick break, and we come back, we'll hear from some of the candidates in this year's SGA election.
Whether you're on the quad,
in your room,
or heading to class,
tune in to Q30 News
for stories by student journalists you can trust.
We are covering the latest here on campus and in surrounding areas.
Get the news you need to know every Wednesday night.
Coming up on #that, we talk about some fun events around Quinnipiac's campus.
And we talk about some weird news that's been discussed around Twitter.
All that and more, we are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
Tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well,
come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted.
Now that's a sandwich.
Thank you for sticking with us, ladies and gentlemen. So right now I have Ryan Hicks and Joe Ayasso, the two candidates for SGA president this year. And guys, first of all, thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to try to address the questions to both of you, give you both a chance to speak on all of them. So first, Joe, you're closest to me, so we'll start with you. What can you make of this whole situation right now?
The way I see it, the election committee is trying to make sure that the election happened according to policy and nothing was violated. So I think I'm just going to trust them to do their due diligence and get this all done. I mean, I'd rather have an election that was correctly done than one that wasn't.
Sure.
So if it takes this extra time, I'm totally fine with it.
And Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Joe said, the student body deserves an election that was fair and that was done correctly. And if that means that we have to take some time to ensure that for the students, because that's what they do deserve, they're the ones who are voting, then that's the process that we're going to go through. And we just have to trust that that's going to go as planned, and I believe that they are doing their best to make it as transparent as possible, like Austin said, and do their due diligence. So I have trust in that process and that committee.
All right, so we just want to try to let our viewers get into you guys' heads. I mean, this is big stakes here. I mean, SGA president is on the line, so I'll start with you this time, Ryan. What have you heard so far? I don't take it as if you're in the dark. You understand what's going on here. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, so we pretty much know just as much as everyone else does. Like they said, there's a grievance filed, and now they're just making sure that everything was done fairly. And so for us, that means just pretty much waiting and going through the process and appealing if need be, and then going through those appealing hearings and trust that the process, the committee are doing their job. So that's kind of where we're at right now. There isn't, we don't have an abundance of knowledge.
Sure.
We're pretty much on the same page as everyone else in the student body is.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think it's important that the knowledge kind of is kept with people to make sure no one gets unintentionally hurt, but mainly to make sure that false information doesn't get out there. We try to keep it, the election committee tries to keep it within themselves just so rumors don't start and people start thinking things are one way when there's something completely different. So, yeah.
So the root of this issue here is that a grievance was filed, and as Austin had just told us before, that means that someone thinks that there is a violation of the campaign policy rules. So, Joe, I'll start with you this time. Do you feel you've done anything wrong in this election?
I'm really like to stick to the rules. I read that election policy over and over before I actually go out and campaign. So I think for the most part, I can't think of any instance where I violated something explicitly that's written in the election policy.
And Ryan, do you feel you've broken any rules?
Like Joe said, this is our 4th election now. We know those policies like the back of our hand, and with so much at stake, we know what the policies are. So whether or not we do or we don't, and that's the election committee's decision. And they're the officiators, so we'll hear what they have to say and we'll go from there.
Right, so if neither of you feel you've done anything wrong, what do the grievances actually mean to you then? Ryan, we'll start with you this time.
Maybe someone feels that we did do something wrong, and that's their opinion, and they have a right to that opinion, and I have a right to my opinion, Joe has a right to his opinion. So I can't take anything away from someone. If someone filed the grievance, they have every right to. They're a student, and I was running for a position that represented the entire student body. So it'd be wrong of me to sit here and say that a grievance was wrong or it shouldn't have been filed. I could never say that. Every student has a right to. There's a reason for that. If someone thought that something was unfair, they filed the grievance, and now we're going through that process. That's the beauty of the system that we have in place, is that everyone has that opportunity.
Joe?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Ryan said. It's very important that we accept that if there's a grievance filed, I know the election committee is going to do their job and make sure that everything gets addressed appropriately. And if it's taking as long as it is to figure this out, then it must be important. So I'm not going to argue with anything that goes on. It's absolutely within whoever's right it was that filed that grievance to do so.
So guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I did read the SGA bylaws, and it said that the members who were involved in this grievance process had the right to attend the election committee meeting and hear what may or may not have been done wrong there. So first off, did you guys attend the meeting, and if so, what did they tell you? Joe?
We did attend the election committee meeting, and basically they told us that the results weren't going to be public for quite a while because they were investigating grievances that were kind of up in the air just about all 3 of these positions in their elections. Sure. It was nothing done directly by us, but they want to make sure that all rules were followed.
Yeah, and they pretty much just they outlined what our options were moving forward. So we know that the appeal process is ongoing at the moment. So they walked us through kind of how to do that, if that's a route that we wanted to take, and just explain the situation so that we knew what was going on.
So a bit of a broader question here. You guys, of course, you said it. You both served on SGA for 3 full years now, and this year it just seemed like SGA had a little bit of a different vibe on it. I've heard a couple times throughout the year, people, whether on or off SGA, have just said something felt a little different. So can you guys just recap your year? How do you think SGA as a whole? Granted, it's not over yet, but how do you think the year has gone? Ryan, we'll start with you.
I'll speak on behalf of my position.
Yeah.
As someone who served as the vice president for finance for a year, I'm very happy with how the year went. We were able to do a lot of special appeals. We received that additional funding from Dr. Thompson to send students on conferences and competitions. So from a finance perspective and taking that budget cut that we did and looking at how we move forward from that and how we maximize the opportunities for students on campus, I'm pleased with how it went from my position and what I did this year and what my committee did this year.
Yeah.
I think the reason a lot of this difficult culture that was kind of created on SGA, I think that was, and the perception from the student body, I think that was due to the fact that we came into this year with very high expectations. We expected a lot from our leadership, we expected a lot from ourselves, and a lot from each other. We wanted to make sure we were accomplishing as much as possible for the student body, and we could say we did all these things at the end of the year.
Right.
With those high expectations, when someone's not living up to the expectations that everyone else has set, things kind of get difficult, and it doesn't always turn out to be too pretty. So I think that's really what it was, and I think this was honestly the first step for us into kind of being a new type of advocacy organization where you're gonna start seeing a lot more from us. The first year was rough because we were trying to get used to it, but I think it's going to be very successful for us in the future.
So as I've said before, the results haven't been released yet, but one of you two sitting next to me is going to be the SGA president next year. So I'm just going to give you a chance to address the student body. If you were to be the one elected, any final thoughts on what you'd tell the students that you would be advocating for? Joe, we'll start with you.
I would really be advocating to make sure that our needs are constantly being thought of and met by administration. For such a long time, we've had administrators who really keep all of our needs on the back burner and decide like, oh, I'm going to do what's bottom line best for the university, but isn't what's bottom line best for the university what's bottom line best for us? So I'm really hopeful I can remind them of that, remind them who pays the bills, and hopefully we can start to see some positive change for the student experience.
And Ryan?
The first thing I'd want to say to the student body is first of all, thank you. I know Joe and I appreciate the support tremendously. It was incredibly humbling to experience the last week. As far as moving forward, Joe hit the nail on the head. I think we were both running campaigns that wanted to make sure the administration knew that students were the priority here. Another thing that if I'm elected to be the next SGA president, I want to change the format of SGA a little bit. Right now we have 41 students who are tasked with representing 7,000 undergraduate students. So that comes out to about 0.5%. I think the student body is painfully underrepresented in the current format of student government. And so another thing that if I'm elected, would like to see changes, maybe how that format can be altered and updated so that we can represent the Quinnipiac community as best as possible and as we should.
Great, guys. Thank you. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Q30 special report on the 2018 Student Government Association elections. Check out all of our content online at q30tv.com, as well as on our social media at Q30 News and at Q30 Television. For Ryan Hicks, Joe Yasso, Austin Salamini, I'm MJ Barrett. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great night.